Hi guys, in today's video I want to tell you about one of the simplest but at the same time the strongest investor strategies in the spring 2026. Right now, in my view, there is a very interesting setup in the market. Obviously not because everything is perfect, but because in some parts, in some projects of the market, you can buy a real strong and demanded unit at a discount at the price that we saw a year ago at the beginning of 2025. And for you as an investor, that can be a really strong point. Okay, so before we talk about the strategy itself, let's zoom out for a second. The market had already gone through a very strong growth cycle. Prices had been growing for a long time and investors felt absolutely comfortable with that, ready to pay more and more, especially for an off-plan project. And obviously there were reasons for that. The market was not coming from weakness, it was coming from strength. And that is very important to understand, because when the market already had a very strong upcycle, even a temporarily shock can create good opportunities for investors. Real estate cycles are never caused by one thing only. Usually they are a combination of supply and demand, affordability, migration, capital inflow, infrastructure, and overall market sentiment. And in Dubai, many of long-term growth factors are still here. The city is still growing, the infrastructure is still improving. For example, recently, like 7 days ago, the Golden Metro Line was announced to be launched. The overall quality of life is still the same as it used to be in February, and the long-term development story is still here. So when you look at the market today, you don't see a market where the core story has disappeared. We can see the markets where the short-term uncertainty created some pricing pressure. And this is exactly why the spring of 2026 is such an interesting and promising time to invest. Because some of the fear is short-term, but all the long-term reasons why people invested in Dubai are still here. So this creates a very specific situation. You may now be able to buy ready or nearly ready property in the market which is already formed, already visible, already measurable, but at the price point which is significantly lower than it was in January and February 2026. And that is, to me, one of the cleanest setups that investor can ask for. So, as you already understand, the strategy itself was super simple. Look at the ready or nearly ready properties in the areas where the market is already clearly formed. Then, just try to find and buy a unit which will be meaningfully lower at the price per square foot than it was in January and February 2026. What I see as a secondary market broker, you can count on up to 15% discount in a really good project. There are discounts up to 40% from the original price even, but it's not the case. This is not something that you look for. Ideally, in a very good projects and communities, you can count on 10 to 15% discount. Of course, it will not come just like that. It will take time, it will take some negotiation skills, but it is possible. So it is that simple. You're not trying to invent a story, you're not trying to guess the future launch. You're buying a real product in a real market with the real comparables at a meaningfully better price than the market was showing just a few months ago. Now, the interesting part is that the idea is super simple, but acting on it is not. Because even during the political turbulence, buying a real product not at all-time high pricing, but at 10 to 15% discount is still psychologically difficult for many investors. Most people prefer to wait. But in my vision, if you manage to find a real good unit and a real demanded project at meaningful price, 10 to 15% discount, in a horizon of 2-3 years, it's very difficult for me to imagine the situation when you will not be a winner. And this is why I specifically like ready or near ready projects in this situation, because you can understand everything about the product already, and this type of a deal gives investor a very important thing and very important feeling, clarity. And in a certain time, clarity has a value. So let me show you what I'm talking about on the real example. Of course, it will be easier and better. So I will show you the transactions for 1-bedroom apartments in 2 projects, two really good projects, Marina Jumeirah Living and Peninsula. So let's compare the prices for one-bedroom apartment in January and February 2026 and with the last 30 calendar days. And for me, as for data-driven real estate broker, it's very important to tell you guys that this data is already representative because the contract F for the deals that happened from April 9th to May 9th today, the contract Fs for those deals, like 95% of them for sure, they were made already in March and April. So let's take a closer look. Now on your screen, you can see the difference in median price. Of course, the median is only the middle point. Some buyers bought with almost no discounts, and at the same time, some other buyers managed to get a significant discount. So if you clearly understand what you're looking for and what is the real worth, you can often find a deal that is better than the median, especially with the help of the experienced secondary market broker. And this is also what I'm always tell to my clients, that on the secondary market, the median price per square foot just shows you the trend, but not necessarily the opportunity. So the main takeaway is very simple. Again, I'm telling these words all the way. In spring 2026, one of the clearest investor strategies is not to chase a news story. It is to buy a real product in real markets with a temporary discount. That means, but before you move forward, please educate yourself. Study the area, study the transactions, visit the place, understand the rental level, visit the project if possible, and negotiate hard. Because when the long story is still alive, the temporary fear can become your entry point. And guys, at last, I'll be really happy to help you to find such a setup here in Dubai real estate market, ready property, nearly ready property, off-market opportunities, or just a second opinion to really discuss and give my own thoughts if it's a real deal or not. Thanks a lot for watching. I will really appreciate likes and subscribes. See you in the next video.